have a Dharma talk for adults. And this one I've titled, I'm Evil. Isn't that great? The words of Shinran Shonin. Even the good person is born into the Pure Land, so without question is the person who is evil. Namo Amida. It's the words of Shinran Shonin, quoted in the Tanisho, a record of lament of divergences. This is record number 3, the collected works of Shinran, volume 1, page 663. So these words of Shinran Shonin are always very, very confusing on the first read. So that first part of the sentence, right? Even the good person is born in the Pure Land. Isn't that backwards? Don't good people go to heaven and evil people go to hell? So the concept of good and evil is very different in Buddhism than in our American English words, which are basically culturally based in Judeo-Christian concepts. And this is one of the great linguistic challenges of teaching Shin Buddhism in English in the United States. So, for example, when I use words like good versus evil, immediately in your head you start seeing images of good versus evil. So angels and demons, that sort of imagery. Judgment Day. You go to the gates of heaven and there's St. Peter with the book, looking at the book going, Gary, dude, you just missed the cutoff. You did 5 bad things and 4 good things, and so straight down to hell. Reward and punishment. So again, the idea of reward and punishment, heaven versus hell. Heaven versus hell. And this goes on for eternity, by the way. And words like salvation through faith. Salvation. Faith. Faith gets kind of a bad reputation nowadays. Faith is kind of considered to be like blindly believing in things. So each of these words carries significant Judeo-Christian cultural meaning and historical nuances and context, which is very, very different. You can imagine would be very different from the 12th and 13th century of Japan when Shinran was around. But these are the only words we have available to use in English. So we do the best we can. So good and evil in the quotation of Shinran's words is a clear example. So I'd like to take a few minutes to share some of the ways of looking at evil, and I put evil in quotes, in Jodo Shinshu, or Shin Buddhism. So let's begin with Bonno. Blind passions is the standard translation of this one. So in Buddhism, there are 108 blind passions, which are exemplified by the 3 poisons, which we all know, of anger, greed, and ignorance. If you've read Dr. Tanaka's book, he uses the metaphor of gas, right? Greed, anger, and stupidity. So ignorance and stupidity are 2 interpretations of the character for that. But basically, we have blind passions which cause us mental, psychological pain, physical pain. It could be any number of things, but anger, greed, ignorance, all of these things are basically rooted in our self-centered human nature. Shakyamuni Buddha, the historical Buddha, 2,600 years ago, taught the truth that human beings inherently possess blind passions, but through practice, they can become free of these passions. And when they're completely free of these blind passions, they realize nirvana, and attain Buddhahood in this life, in this body. And this is the traditional approach as taught by Shakyamuni Buddha. The key point being that Shakyamuni Buddha, the Buddha, taught the truth that human beings inherently possess blind passions. We all have blind passions. Shinran, however, takes the opposite position. He realizes that he is incapable of ridding himself of all of these passions, of these blind passions. Can't get rid of all of them. And the ones that he cannot get rid of, he calls evil. So, in particularly in the Shin Buddhist teachings, in the Jodo Shinshu tradition, remember that evil is referring to our blind passions. Blind passions. So, for example, anger, greed, and ignorance. Raise your hand if you've been able to let go of your anger. I remember things that happened 40 years ago, and I'm still really irritated by that. Greed. How many of us have conquered our greed? You know, I'd be really happy if I just had the new iPhone 12, which is going to come out pretty soon. I'd be really happy if I had a bigger house, a newer car, $10 million in the bank, whatever it is. But we always want more. And this is a sense of greed. We actually have probably everything we need to be reasonably happy. And yet we want more. We want more. So in traditional Buddhism, there are many practices which are designed to break free of our attachment to our blind passions. So, live as a monk, shave your head, run off to the mountains, studying, meditating, chanting, begging for food, having no possessions except 3 cloths which are used as the robes, and a begging bowl and a razor to keep your head shaved. So in Shakyamuni's time, if you were not able or capable of becoming a monk, the realization of nirvana, the attainment of Buddhahood, was out of reach, and you were pretty much out of luck. But Shinran attempted the traditional path for 20 years on Mount Hiei, which was the center of Buddhism in Japan at the time. And he realized, he came to the conclusion that he was unable to break free of his attachments to his blind passions. Thus, he was not able to realize nirvana. He was not able to attain Buddhahood. So Shinran leaves Mount Hiei, and he encounters the Nembutsu teachings of Honen's Jodoshu, Pure Land School. Shinran discovered the truth he was seeking in the Nembutsu teachings, in Namu Amida Butsu. And he spends the next 71 years sharing the Jodo Shinshu teachings. The words of Shinran Shonin. It is impossible for us, filled as we are with blind passions, to free ourselves from birth and death, from any practice whatever. Sorrowing at this, Amida made the vow, the essential intent of which is the attainment of Buddhahood by the evil person. The words of Shinran Shonin. Namu Amida Butsu, Namu Amida Butsu, Namu Amida Butsu. So Shinran Shonin's view of the human condition is that it's just, we cannot follow the traditional path of Buddhism because we're so filled with blind passions. We cannot free ourselves from this world of birth and death, this world of samsara, the world of delusion. So whatever practice we take, maybe it's meditation, maybe it's chanting, maybe it is becoming a monk. So it's for the average person, for most of us, right? It's just not possible. So to put this in more modern terms, right? Shinran, saw that the human condition is that we are stubbornly clinging to our attachments to blind passions because we think these blind passions are who we are. If you're a fan of Star Trek, you might remember this one, right? I need my blind passions. My blind passions are who I am. I'm of a generation where Star Trek was really important growing up. But think about that, right? If it's your anger, greed, and stupidity or ignorance, right, that makes you who you are and you're attached to that. So we can start seeing where suffering comes from. We can start seeing where our problems come from. It's the attitude that it's about me. It's about me. So the vow, in the quote, the vow, with the capital V, refers to the 18th of 48 vows made and fulfilled by the Bodhisattva Dharmakara, and he spent 10 billion years, 10 kalpas, to become Amida Buddha. So he fulfilled all 48 vows, and specifically the 18th one. So he creates the Pure Land, he establishes the path of Nembutsu, specifically for the evil person. Specifically for the evil person. The primal vow is called the Hongan in Japanese. And so Hongwanji, right, this is the Hongan in Hongwanji. So we are literally the temple of the primal vow. We are the temple of the 18th vow. So by hearing and saying Namu Amida Butsu, the name of Amida, we are embraced by boundless compassion and infinite wisdom, Amida Buddha. And we are embraced just as we are. And this other power, this power of Amida Buddha, the power of the vow, is tirelessly and constantly working to guide us to birth in the Pure Land. The working of the vow in our lives is what brings us to the realization, I am the evil person who is the object of Amida's vow. Okay, so remember, this is I just cannot let go of my anger. I cannot let go of my greed. There are blind passions I just cannot let go of because I think it's me. But we are the evil person who's the object of Amida's vow. And by truly realizing the depth of our quote-unquote evil attachment to me, my ego, and to myself, our blind passions, right? We simultaneously realize the inconceivable magnitude of Amida's compassion, which reaches out to save me of all people. So this transformation is called Shinjin, the entrusting heart, which comes to us through the working of Amida's vow, through Namu Amida Butsu, through the Nembutsu. And after we have gratefully received the gift of Shinjin from Amida, our Nembutsu, our saying of Namu Amida Butsu becomes the Nembutsu of gratitude for the Buddha's benevolence, and the Nembutsu of joy for the assurance of birth in the Pure Land, and thus Nirvana, and thus Buddhahood, and thus our return in oneness with Amida to guide others. Namu Amida Butsu. So, does the all-embracing compassion and all-inclusive wisdom of Amida mean I can do all the evil stuff I want to? And then just say Namu Amida Butsu at the end of life, and I'll be saved by Amida. That might be a plan. I can do all the evil that I want to. Of course, it's this type of smarty-pants thinking that is one of my particular blind passions. And Shinran faced this misinterpretation of the teachings during his life. So to paraphrase one of his letters, one of the letters of Shinran, he says, don't drink poison simply because there's an antidote. Right? So the message of hope in Shin Buddhism is that Namu Amida Butsu is everyone. Right? Everyone, just as they are, is given the opportunity to realize birth in the Pure Land, to realize nirvana, to attain Buddhahood. Anyone can say Namu Amida Butsu anywhere, anytime. Whether you're awake, sleeping, standing, sitting, or walking, or running, anyone can say at any time, Namu Amida Butsu. Anyone can be saved from the bondage of selfishness through the benevolence of the Buddha Amida, the all-embracing compassion that is Amida. And anyone can realize the assurance of birth in the Pure Land through Shinjin, the entrusting heart that is given to us through the working of Amida's vow. So having received Shinjin, our birth in the Pure Land is assured, and we are free to live each moment of this unrepeatable life to the fullest, with strength and serenity, no matter how life unfolds. Even the good person is born in the Pure Land, so without question is the person who is evil. The words of Shinran Shonin. Nam Nam